This video is all about painting an epic environment landscape. I'll show you exactly how to paint this snowy scene in the mountains from start to finish. My name is Victor, I'm a concept artist, I work for film and games, and I'm really excited to show you the final result. So let's start. Now, this image took roughly 1 hour and 45 minutes to complete, and you might think that's quite a quick result and the whole process is quite fast, and maybe it is because I've sort of got used to this process and recording on YouTube, and I have like all these bits and timings that I kind of keep in mind. But I also wanted to mention that that's not necessarily a good thing. It's not a good idea to rush paintings because the best artists I know, I follow, illustrators, concept artists, are very deliberate and actually very slow when they're composing and when they're working on their images. So I would actually recommend, if you can try to set up goals for yourself to spend as much time as possible on a specific sketch or image you're working on, it's going to lead to better results for sure. So instead of thinking, oh, I want to complete this in an amount of time, rather think about, you want to make this image as good as possible, no matter how much time I spend on it. Of course, you don't have to go overboard, because then you might risk having the image being overworked, but there is a very important balance between if you're rushing an image and you're just trying to apply the brushstrokes as fast as possible, thinking that you'll get further ahead, and actually being deliberate and making sure that every brushstroke is important for the composition, for the value matrix, it improves the image. It's not just there without any purpose. Me personally, I'm sometimes not really happy that I am rushing the images particularly for these tutorials. So if you take one advice from this video is that, don't rush your paintings, focus on quality first. And now back to our image. You can just fill in all the main elements from the linework sketch with flat value. Think about the color references that you have and pick up your hues, but for now we don't worry about the form, but this is going to be our starting point for when you want to describe the lighting and describe the form of the objects. Last element is a chain of mountains in the background. I'm just gonna do the same process again. For our sketch, I blocked in almost all the main elements, and we have this scene on some inclined slope with a few towers here and there. Of course, I'm planning to place a character as well for storytelling and for scale. So check out how this layer of atmosphere, of like thick atmosphere being added, is completely changing the mood. We're going for a very moody, slightly darker environment, so we're gonna have some light here and there, but also I want to have the background completely in the dark, showing that there is a huge snowstorm in the background and it's kind of limited vision and all that. Also, I'm thinking that it would be a good idea to enhance the lighting and to add some contrast, so maybe the foreground can be a little bit darker, and somewhere in the middle ground we're gonna have a region that's a bit more lit for our character, also to create some additional contrast and to emphasize our focal point. So we have this building in the middle ground, which is kind of our focal point, and it's time to describe the form a little bit. We've blocked all the main shapes with flat values and hues, and now we want to think about form description and how the light is affecting all these objects and kind of like sell the idea of a 3D environment. So I'm thinking we should have a bit of a light source from the upper left corner, like really soft light. It's not going to create a lot of sharp shadows. We're going to start by indicating where the shadows are, and in terms of values, you don't want to push the contrast right away in the beginning. Start slow, get a feel for the values, and then increase the contrast where you see fit. Texturing this building as well, I figured that maybe we should have a nice contrast of temperature between the environment being cold and kind of like bluish with white, and this building having a warmer tone. And in the beginning I work with large brush strokes because I don't want to dwell on details, and you can see that I'm building the whole structure from ground up, from flat colors and then adding some form descriptions, and then within that form I'm trying to add some textural information, some important highlights, trying to make the object a bit more interesting by adding some different materials to it as well. For now, I'm really going to spend some time and try to describe it as good as possible, just to make sure that there is, the whole image is consistent. So if this is our focal point, you want to spend a bit more time adding some material information, lighting information, form, and also overall just make the image a bit more interesting. That's why I'm kind of picking between different brushes and trying to add some marks that are creating some interest. And the building in the foreground is going to get the same treatment pretty much, just starting with a little bit of textures and then kind of figuring out those accents that have more contrast to them. So now let's emphasize the windy atmosphere that we were going for and start adding some layers of this dense sort of like winds with snow and all that. This part of course requires a fine touch. You don't want to create lots of contrast and unnecessary noise. So if you're not careful, you might do that and then it kind of breaks the whole composition and the image becomes noisy, the values, all of that. So aim for, softer edges and a bit more transparency. You don't want to create too much contrast and take attention away from our focal point. But overall, it's a very simple approach. Take a soft brush and then you can also use some filters like motion blur, imitate the fact that these are like strong winds and kind of sell the idea of a stormy environment. Now that building in the background is just going to be a silhouette and I'm trying to balance it out so it's readable enough and also not too intrusive. Now, in order to make this environment work, you want to make sure that all these elements are fairly well integrated in the scene. So notice that I'm trying to get rid of some unnecessary contrast, for example, some weird sharp edges here and there. Because it's a snowy environment, you want to kind of place snow everywhere. Some weird values might be sticking out and you want to calm those down as well. And maybe if you see fit, try to soften up some edges. Make sure that everything is consistent with your environment theme. Okay, now let's try and add the character. Very simple process. Again, we're gonna start with the silhouette. Let's make it look like it's sort of in the middle of a step. I'm also going to give him like a cape, maybe fluttering in the wind. Could be also cool to have a giant sword as well. After the silhouette is more or less done, you can approach it the same way as you did with the building. So start with local values, some local hues, flat, and then a little bit of form according to the lighting in the scene. And again, the same thing, you want to integrate this subject in the environment, so add some snow on top, maybe adjust the values. All of this helps to kind of sell the whole idea. You want to have a consistency to the storytelling, so you can add the trail in the snow, and that pretty much concludes the whole image overall. If you found this process useful, take a look at the previous week's video where we tackle completely different environments, so I think you'll find it interesting. And now let's have a look at the final image. So this is what we have right now. I've kind of just adjusted the colors just a little bit and also added a sharpened filter on top because some of the areas were a little bit blurry. And there you go. Thank you so much for watching till the end. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it useful. If you did, please consider liking and subscribing. It helps a ton. Thanks again so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Coming soon.